So thanks everyone for jumping in. So we've got an awesome webinar for you today. So we're going to be covering building reports your e-commerce accounting clients will love. So on the webinar today, we've got me. So I'm Amy from A2X. I do product marketing at A2X. And we've also got James Irving from Fathom, who heads up the sales team in the Americas. So thanks for being here today, James.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we've got a pretty good agenda to cover today. So we're going to start off with some Camp A2X insights. We're then going to cover some considerations for offering advisory to e-commerce businesses. We're then going to dive into some of the reports your e-commerce accounting clients will love. So the bulk of probably what you're here for. And then we're going to wrap up at the end with a demo of A2X, and we'll also have a demo of Fathom. We will have all going to plan, we'll have a time at the end to cover the questions. But if you have questions as we go, feel free to pop them in to the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll make sure we get those answered at the end. And then the other point that I will just make is that this webinar is recording, and the recording will be available after the webinar is complete. Cool. Okay, so starting with Camp A2X. So some of you might be familiar with Camp A2X. Some of you attending the webinar might have actually been at Camp A2X, but you might have seen some of the content on social about it. But a little bit of background if you haven't heard about Camp A2X. So it's an event that A2X runs. It's not like any other conference. We bring the best minds in e-commerce accounting to, I guess, a rural sort of remote lakeside town in our interior called Woodview. I actually had to look up I was there and I actually had to look up the location of what it was, because you kind of just get on a bus and head out to camp, and the rest is taken care of. So we spend 3 days together, and the whole concept of camp is learning and sharing all things about e-commerce from other experts in the field. So some of the themes that came out of camp this year were selling online is difficult, especially over the past year. So we've seen that some of the, obviously the economic impact is starting to filter down to e-commerce clients. Some partners were sharing that they were having, customers having difficult times. And then the fast-changing e-commerce world is creating both challenges and opportunities. So there's new technology that's come into the space, which is creating both opportunities and I guess pressures, perhaps from an AI perspective, but there's still so much opportunity in this space. So people are looking for experts. One of the other cool things about camp this year is that we also invited some sponsors to come along and attend. And so A2X was really, I guess, purposeful in the sponsors that they had come along. There was only a handful that we had there, and Fathom was one of them. So James was actually at camp as well. So the last point that we have here is from James. So do you want to jump in and talk about camp and what kind of your key takeaways were, James?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, first I had a great time. I really enjoyed attending. I thought it was such a refreshing event. I've been to a lot of the big conferences, over the years in the accounting space, and they're great. But this was a totally different thing, and actually, created time to make real connections and build relationships with people. Some of our customers were there, so just really enjoyed it, and it was incredibly valuable. The insights that came out of it and the learnings were unmatched. Yeah, and I would just echo some of this. I think some of the things I learned, definitely it's a challenging time for the e-commerce industry due to changes to platforms, increasing ad costs. Certain types of e-com sellers are struggling, especially smaller ones. And that's also affected by the consumer right now, who's under pressure and is kind of being more careful with their spending. Or at least, relative to kind of the pandemic highs, which is, affecting sellers as well. So just a more challenging environment in general from what we've seen the past couple of years. And that's kind of filtering through to accountants as well. But, not to be a downer, there's a ton of opportunity here. Advisors have never been more critical for e-commerce sellers to succeed. Helping their clients to understand the numbers, where to cut costs and make changes, where to invest for growth. So, and accountants are, really uniquely positioned to help clients in times of challenge. So all in all, I love the event. Would highly recommend anyone who specializes or even has clients in the e-commerce space to attend in the future.
So great. Yeah, we had someone, I think, when I registered, and they said, I've never been to a conference before. And we were like, that's completely fine. This is not really a conference. So awesome to hear you had a great time. Cool. So before we jump into the reports, we're also just going to dive a little bit deeper into advisory. So what we kind of mean about advisory, particularly in an e-commerce space. So I think obviously accountants, but also most e-commerce sellers are probably familiar with the more traditional side of accounting and creating, you know, the financial statements and possibly just doing accounting from an end of year tax perspective. But there is so much more value, especially with the challenges that these e-commerce clients are going through, that can be provided to these businesses with advisory, particularly in the e-commerce space, as it is so challenging. There's a list that we have here, but I guess just to highlight some of them. Tax compliance is a big one, especially from an e-commerce perspective. A lot of sellers might set up and not be aware that they are selling in different areas that require different tax applications. So that might be they're set up and they don't realize that they're selling in different states that have different tax requirements, or even we've come across clients that are selling overseas without really realizing and being aware of the tax implications that come from that. So because e-commerce does provide such an awesome opportunity to be able to sell overseas or in different regions, this is one that requires expertise. So that's somewhere that accountant advisories can really provide a lot of benefit. The other one and this was really a real theme of camp as well, is inventory management. So inventory is likely the biggest cost for most businesses, but that's especially the case for e-commerce. So and there's a lot of questions, even at camp, there was a lot of questions and discussions about what is the best way to manage your inventory. I think this is an area that e-commerce sellers are often looking for support in. Whether that's in terms of what systems they need to be setting up, whether they can be working over a spreadsheet or whether they need an inventory management tool, what's the best practices there, controlling inventory for different sales channels. So if they're selling on different channels, how they fulfill that inventory. There's a lot that goes into it. And then obviously there's a lot that goes into it from the accounting perspective as well, in terms of COGS and even going down to like purchasing inventory and things like that. So again, this is another area where accountants can provide, especially if you're focusing on e-commerce, it's where you can provide a lot of expertise. And I think there's also a lot of demand, or e-commerce sellers are looking for help in this space. The other ones there we have are probably more, I guess, traditional in the sense of accounting, but I think the point to make here is that even with the way that, with the trend that we were seeing with e-commerce businesses starting to have a more difficult time and sales perhaps not growing like they were in the past, understanding the data and really diving into things like cash flow and margins are more important than ever, because they might make the difference of getting beyond the next few months or not. So particularly in the e-commerce space, as James was saying, there's increasing competition for advertising and even just other e-commerce businesses popping up. So any insight that you can provide for your clients beyond just the standard kind of financial statements to actually help them understand and dive deeper. Things like when is the best time to be providing inventory? Another one that comes up is, do they have a plan if inventory gets lost, which is a story that we've heard often when sending inventory to Amazon. How's their cash flow for things like that, and if they're even just tracking the inventory correctly. So there's a lot that can be provided in this space from an advisory perspective. Awesome. Okay, so James, I'll hand over to you to give some background to these reports.
Yeah, well, my presentation today will really focus on Fathom reports, and I hope to show you a lot of what Fathom can do for you and your clients. Some of the things we'll touch on, reporting on cost of goods sold and margins, which obviously are critical for e-commerce sellers. Also, we'll touch on a newer feature, which is aged AR and payables reporting out of Fathom. We'll touch on cash flow reporting, actual versus budget comparative and forecast comparative. And then also breaking down by class or tracking categories. If your clients are set up with those at all, Fathom can help you report on those breakdowns as well. So we'll talk through that. And then finally, kind of multi-entity. So if you do have any sellers who are operating entities in multiple countries, we can help with the consolidation of those in multi-currency as well. So we'll get into the product and take a look in a bit, but my goal is to show you a lot of what Fathom can do for your ecom clients and get you excited about it. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And before I hand over to you to do that, James, I'll just provide a little bit of I guess background as to A2X. So you might be wondering, you might be using A2X, or if you're not using A2X, you might be sort of wondering how A2X sort of fits into this piece. So A2X is an e-commerce accounting tool. So the whole goal of A2X is to make sure that you're getting accurate and useful data into your accounting system so that you can then use it to run reports and use have numbers that you can rely on. So I'll start by just sort of explaining the e-commerce accounting problem and the background to why A2X exists. So what we see quite a lot is that sellers will receive a deposit into their bank account. So Amazon, for example, pays sellers every 2 weeks. They'll receive a deposit into their bank account. And a lot of sellers are just tempted to code that whole deposit to a sales account. The problem with that is it's not actually, as we can see within this table, that's not actually the sales amount that they've received from Amazon. It's just the settlement that Amazon has paid for them. So to be able to A, successfully understand how your business is going, and B, be able to run meaningful reports, you need to be splitting down this data into what it actually was. So what you can see here on the right is a breakdown of what the transaction data actually was. So we can see that the sales wasn't actually 24,772. It was actually 35,385. So I'm sure you can understand the implications of what's happening if a seller is coding their whole amount to sales. They're going to be understating their sales, and there's all sorts of implications that go with that. Not only that, you can see that there's been tax collected. So Amazon, depending on where you're selling, might collect tax and might even remit it on your behalf, but it is actually the seller's responsibility, or perhaps in alignment with their accountant, to ensure that the tax collected is correct and they've paid the right amount of tax. So you need to be splitting out and having visibility into what tax is being collected, what tax is being paid. Another big one on Amazon is obviously the fees. So breaking down the fees by the correct type that they are, understanding how much sellers are paying in fees, and then refunds and things like that as well. So, and shipping, of course, as well, income that's being collected, and then what they're paying in shipping. So it might seem really obvious just to go to Amazon and have a look within the seller center to try and get a breakdown. So obviously, if you were to understand that this 24,772 wasn't your sales amount, it might seem really obvious just to get that information somewhere. But the difficulty is it actually is hard to find that information, and it's really hard to get your numbers to tie back to the money that you've received in your bank deposit. So what happens then is most sellers will just ignore it. So they'll do what I mentioned earlier. They'll just create, they'll just post everything to sales, and then they might come to their accountant and say, this is the money I've received from Amazon. And then it might become a big mess in terms of tracking back over perhaps 12 months to try and work out what money they've received and what was sales, and breaking down all the transactions that I mentioned earlier. Some sellers, they'll create a best guess entry. So they might have a rough idea of what their sales were and then kind of lump things together. But the problem with that is they're not getting visibility. They might not be seeing how much they're actually spending in advertising. And at the end of the day, those aren't accurate entries. And then the other option is to do it manually. So you can pull a settlement report out of Amazon, for example, and break it down and then enter the information manually into Amazon, into your accounting system like QuickBooks or Xero. But the difficulty is, one, that's really time consuming and manual, and you might have got it right 1 month and then Amazon introduces a new fee the next month, which can throw your whole system off. So it's a really complicated process, and that's the whole reason that A2X exists. So it's not all doom and gloom. So A2X exists to solve this exact problem. So I focus quite a bit on Amazon, but the same process applies on other sales channels such as Shopify, eBay, Etsy, and Walmart. So the whole problem that A2X solves is that you receive a deposit in your bank account, and then A2X is going to create an entry that reconciles that payout for you with all the information that you need. So how it works is A2X will connect to the sales channel. So in this example, connecting to Amazon, and it pulls in all that sort of raw, uncategorized data. So you can kind of think of A2X as living in between your accounting software and your sales channel. So that data comes into A2X, and there is a lot of it. So you might think, I guess that's another problem with doing it manually, is that it's rows and rows of data. I think we were looking at an Amazon seller who had only done about 50 orders, and there was sort of over 500 transaction lines within that spreadsheet. So A2X pulls in all that data and it begins to organize it for you. Then what A2X will do is it will create summarized entries. So rather than posting all of the transactions individually over to your accounting software, it will create an entry that matches perfectly to what you've been paid, and it will be a summary for each of the transaction type. So you get a nice summary line of the sales amount, the shipping amount, the tax amount. And probably the other point to keep in mind is that, as I said earlier, Amazon pays sellers every 2 weeks. So you get this deposit in your bank account that might cover a month end. So there might be information or data in there for both August and September, for example. So if that's the case, A2X will create 2 entries for you, one for the August amount and one for the September amount, both summaries, and they will match to the amount you've been paid. And then you send it through to your accounting software and it creates that nice little match where you can just do a one-click reconciliation. So that's the whole purpose of A2X, is that we're creating really nice, clean, summarized entries that will match to your bank account deposits, and that can be really nicely reconciled. And then, as I said at the beginning, the whole purpose of this is to have good data that you can then use to run the financial statements and run reports, and essentially just have that financial visibility into how your business is running. So I'll just switch my screen over. So that's all well and good in principle, but I'll show you now how A2X works. So what I'm actually going to do is start with the QuickBooks banking screen, because this is likely a screen that most accountants are pretty familiar with. So you can see here that the seller has received a bunch of deposits coming into their bank account. You can see here from Shopify, from Etsy, Amazon, for example. What QuickBooks actually recommends is just categorizing these to or putting these to an uncategorized income or sales account. And you can see why sellers kind of come in here and attempted to do that. As I said earlier, the problem with that is it's not entirely sales. So these transactions need to be broken down into what actually occurred for that period. So introducing A2X. So A2X lives separately or outside of QuickBooks. How it works is you come in and you'll connect your QuickBooks and you'll connect your Amazon. So once you've done that, all of your transaction data will start flowing into A2X, and A2X will start creating entries for you. The second part of the setup within the third part of the setup within A2X is the accounts and tax mapping. So I can show you that now. What that means is you essentially select within A2X which accounts within your general ledger you would like your transactions to be posted through to. So if we have a look at this, for example, A2X will split out all of the different transaction types for you. You can see promotions and refunds and sales, and then A2X can actually create the default accounts you need. So obviously you would want sales to go to a sales account. If you already have an Amazon sales account set up, you can come in and just select that from the list available. But if this is the first customer that you're setting up and you're just wanting to automate it as much as possible, you can come in. A2X has an onboarding questionnaire. You can answer a bunch of questions, and then A2X will create the accounts that you need within your general ledger, and you'll be ready to go. Once you've done the mapping, A2X will then start creating those settlements, like I mentioned earlier. If I scroll down, we can have a look at this one here. So we can see that this seller will have received $1,075.47 into their bank account. And this period just covered the 1 month. So it was from 10th of July to 24th of July. As I mentioned earlier, if it covered a June and July, you would see 2 entries. But we can see here that A2X has broken everything down really nice and cleanly. So you can see here there's a sales amount, there's a reserve balance, there's been tax collected, there's fulfillment fees, yeah, tax, shipping, everything's broken down. You can see the amount that's here, and you can also see the account that it's been posted through to. And then depending on your requirements and accounting setup, you can potentially calculate the tax in your accounting software. So then what happens is you can set A2X up to automatically post these through to your QuickBooks or Xero, and they will appear in your bank account. So what I'll do is I'll just jump. I think the one that we were looking at was for June or July. Here it is. So we can see that's been posted through. So there we go, the 1,075 and 47. So you can see here that one match has been found, and then all that you have to do is click match, and all of that information will be taken care of. So if I actually have a look on what the entry looks like, you'll see it's very similar to what we saw over in A2X. So all of the data is broken down. You can see the value, you can see the description, and then A2X actually attaches a settlement report as well. So because it's a summary, if you were ever wanting to look up which individual orders, for example, were included in which payout, A2X can provide you with that information, mainly for audit purposes. And so that pretty much takes care of it. So yeah, it's a really nice, simple tool. I think ideally in the background, you can just have A2X running and pushing through really valuable data to your accounting software. And yeah, we'll be set to run your reports. Okay, great. So that's a good overview of how A2X works. Now let's talk about Fathom. Over to you, James.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so we'll get into the product here in a moment, but just wanted to kind of refresh for anyone who's brand new to Fathom, you know, what we do, and you know, what we really focus on is helping you and your clients make informed decisions, as well as communicating data, whether that's to investors or to the board or to any other stakeholders internally. Fathom provides a platform that allows you to communicate data in a way that's understandable and insightful and helps people make decisions. So number of different areas that Fathom can help with, but certainly you know, making informed decisions, identifying trends in the business, catching errors potentially in the data, being able to see it in a different way that allows you to recognize kind of anomalies as well, and then presenting that data in a professional and understandable way in front of stakeholders. And yeah, we'll touch on a range of metrics in the demo, but just wanted to also mention that, you know, Fathom can help you bring together different data sources into one place to see everything all in one view. So whether that's data from Shopify or Amazon or an HR system, you can bring all that data into Fathom and centralize it in one place and give your client the full picture. So these are just some examples of metrics that you guys would be familiar with, that you can track together with the standard financial data in Fathom. And I think with that, we're going to jump into the product. Cool. So now we're in Fathom, and we've got a number of different companies here. The demo company I'm going to work with is this entity right here. And just wanted to start with the settings just to show kind of the foundation of Fathom and how the data comes through from QuickBooks or Xero. Of course, is the chart of accounts. That really forms the foundation of what we do. This chart of accounts is probably not as comprehensive as a business that's using A2X, but we've done our best to give a reasonable example here of what it may look like. So you can adjust the chart of accounts in Fathom to suit your needs or the client's needs for management reporting, and then these changes will flow through to the financial statements and everything you do throughout Fathom. So it's really easy to move accounts around, reorder them, create new headings and subheadings within. So you can create your own custom management reporting structure that then reflects in all the reports you create. That structure that you create in the chart of accounts, including the headings you create, can also be copied across clients. So once you create it once, you're able to recreate that format for all of your clients quite easily within Fathom. That's just if you want to change something from what's in QuickBooks or Xero already. Maybe you don't have full control of the chart of accounts. Your client has an accountant in-house. You may want to create a new structure that's more conducive to the reporting you want to do. So Fathom gives you that kind of go-between. So I won't spend too much time on settings. We're here to see the reports. So I'm going to go into the report center. Just know that you can create report templates that can be shared across clients. So you can create common formats that you use every month or quarter with your clients. I've created an example here, and we're just going to jump in. So there's a range of different things you can do in Fathom reports. If you're used to reporting out of the GL systems, this is quite different. You can do a lot of additional things in Fathom reports, such as create summaries with placeholders. So I'll just go through some of these features. I love this one. I was playing around with this earlier, but essentially if you want to write up a summary for your client, you can do that within the report builder. And it's really easy to add what we call placeholders. So these placeholders bring in data that you may want to include as text automatically. So without you having to go look for the number, you can just basically type the @ symbol, look for your KPI. So we had COGS % of revenue here. Maybe we want to compare versus the same month in the prior year. And we can go ahead and bring that number in. So it's really cool, makes it very easy to write summaries. And then when you send out a report, even online, it's going to look like that text was just typed out. But basically, these are all live data fields that you can bring in, and that can also include the period. So these periods would actually update as you create your new report for September, October. They're going to update along with the report. We also have what we call key metrics. So these are just components that highlight some of the key metrics you might be tracking for the business. So we've got total revenue here. You can include description of the metric for your client. And then we can include comparatives as well. So we've got total revenue, gross profit, and net income all here. You can easily change these. So if you want a different comparative, for example, you can change that quite easily to compare to the rolling 12-month average or something else. We also have some of our accounts brought in. So these are actual accounts right from our chart of accounts, and you'll recognize that format from what we just saw in the chart of accounts. So we've got our headings here. We can easily just pull those through as totals and then select the period we want to view. We also have some non-financial KPIs here that we've brought in. So we brought in the number of new customers into Fathom, and then we were able to calculate CAC just using marketing costs and the number of new customers. So we basically created a formula to calculate that out. So this report is just an example of how you might format things. You might have a written summary. You might have some of these key metrics up front to get the high level detail of performance. And then we start to get into more specifics. So now we're getting into some trends and highlighting some of the charting that's available in Fathom. So we have revenue versus last year in this example. And then we also have revenue by channel. So again, this is just pulling in 2 of the headings from our chart of accounts that we've selected here. And it's really easy to make changes to these charts. If you want to see something different, you can very quickly change it to a quarterly format, for example, or annual. You can add rolling average and other comparatives quite easily. So we can add a rolling average there to see that, smooth the results out a bit. You could also include a future projection if you wanted to see that. You can drop in a forecast projection or a rolling average projection on either one of these. And I'll just add some future months in here to show that projection going out into the future. We've also got, of course, gross profit, very important. This is just showing in quarterly in this example with a rolling average line as well for comparison. Then we get down to some of the bottom line. So we've got cumulative net income. So this is actually totaling throughout the year to date. And we see we're in August in this period. So we can see the cumulative net income there versus last year. Obviously, a big difference there. Then we can also see profit and cash flow side by side. Obviously, that is a sticking point for a lot of businesses, is understanding the difference and knowing what to do. But we can see here, in this case, EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, compared to net cash flow in this chart, and being able to show a client how that can be different each month. So just a range of charts here. This can be reformatted completely. So I've got it kind of in a dashboard format where I can have 6 charts essentially on one page in a PDF report. But it's very easy to reformat this if you wanted to, and bring more attention to a single chart. So the report builder here is built to be really drag and drop. And then once you're ready, you can download it into PDF at any point. Getting into some more different areas here. So we've got breakdown charts. These are going to show each period. They're going to order an accounts by balance essentially. So we have a cost of sales breakdown here showing the top cost of sales accounts in this month, and we have top expenses. So that will automatically reshuffle depending on which accounts came in higher or lower. Expenditure mix to show the share of the total. You can also include that. Then we get into some balance sheet, just to show examples here of some balance sheet charts showing debt versus equity in a bar chart, showing short-term debt over time. We've also got cash conversion. So this is including the accounts receivable days, accounts payable days, and then inventory days all compared. So you can see how quickly you're paying out, how quickly you're collecting, and how quickly you're turning over inventory in the business, which is really cool. Also seeing that inventory balance over time. Just some Fathom kind of staples. If you've used Fathom, you've probably seen these. The break-even analysis is great for showing the break-even point in operating profit for the business and the margin of safety. Also just showing a client what their variable costs are in total for their business as a share of $1 of revenue. Helpful to see margins that way. And then cash flow waterfall. This is a very popular visualization as well within Fathom. The cash flow statement can be really difficult for people to understand, even accountants, I'm told. But the cash flow waterfall tries to bring a visual to that and make it understandable where cash is moving in the business. So this essentially, flows from left to right. We can see revenue coming in and then back for cost of sales and expenses, and essentially flows all the way down to net cash flow at the end of the period. So being able to actually relate changes in inventory and changes in accounts receivable to cash flow visually for the client can be quite helpful. And then, of course, we can't forget the financials. So these are just some examples of financial statements you could create in Fathom. This is basically this month versus or last month versus last year, with a common size comparative in there as well. So you can see the percent of revenue for each account and get that comparison. And then we've got a trended chart, so we can see year to date, monthly, with the year to date total. And then also just wanted to highlight some forecast charts. So these are a little different, but basically if you have a forecast created in Fathom, you can incorporate it into your reporting. And so in this case, we've created essentially a baseline forecast, and then we've created a best case and a worst case scenario for the business. And so these charts can just help you compare and show the range of possibilities, right? No forecast is going to be perfect, but if we can see the range of potential outcomes that are likely, then that helps the seller to gain confidence and clarity on their business. So we can see that for a range of metrics based on the forecast we've created, including gross profit. We also have forecasted net income based on that forecast that's created, and then forecasted cash on hand, just to bring that back to what's going to be in the bank for the rest of the year. And then, of course, forecasted in a table format as well. So that's a number of different items that might be relevant for an e-com business. I just wanted to show in a different demo, wanted to touch on some of the class reporting features and AR AP aging. So this is a QuickBooks example report. And yeah, these are new components for us. So we've included AR and AP aging in two different formats. So you can display it in a visual format, showing the buckets of receivables in each bucket here. And we can actually adjust. Right now we're doing 3 periods of 30 days, which is fairly common. You can actually adjust that if you wanted to show different bucketing. But we can see 96% are in the oldest bucket here of receivables. And then in a table format, we can break that down to the actual customer. Same with payables. So we can see our vendors here as well. So I just wanted to highlight those new components. Then we get into breakdown. So this class, or this QuickBooks company, has classes set up. So we can see, in this case, revenue by class, gross profit by class, just as examples, showing that breakdown within the business. And that could be locations as well. And this works for tracking categories in Xero. And then also showing the financials by class, showing the comparison side by side there. And then just last thing I wanted to show is the consolidated features. So if you do have clients that are operating typically in multiple countries for an e-com seller, but it may be they need to have different entities in a single currency. Either way, Fathom can help with that consolidation process. So just showing a group here of 5 companies. And it's really easy to create these groups. You get the same reporting functionality at the group level. You can break down by account or by entity on any metric. And then, yeah, just some examples here. So these are the different entities here. And then, of course, the financials by company. You can do your eliminations in Fathom and have those eliminations show up in the financial statements. Awesome. I think that is everything I wanted to show, Amy. So I'll go back to you.
Cool. So if people have additional questions, James, they can get in contact with you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If anybody has questions after this, definitely get in touch with our team. We have a free trial, so you can sign up for that quite easily and start to test some of these features out. But yeah, definitely reach out to our team if you have any questions on how to set something up. We'd love to help you.
Awesome. It's a really awesome tool, James. I was sitting here thinking I would love to use Fathom, and I'm not an accountant, and I don't have any businesses either, so it doesn't really suit me. But it's so nice.
It's
and
really
clean.
fun.
Yeah,
it's really fun. I actually just created a report for our internal team, with our sales numbers and everything, just putting in non-financial KPIs, and kind of reignited my love for the product. It's really, really fun to build reports.
I bet. Yeah, it looks super easy to use as well, just the drag and drop.
It is.
Love it. Cool. Okay, well, A2X I guess getting towards the end of the webinar before we jump into the Q&A. So it sounds as though you can get a free trial of Fathom, and you can also get a free trial of A2X. So reach out to James if you've got any questions about Fathom, or you can also sounds like you can just sign up on their website for a free trial, and then the same process for A2X. So we have actually had quite a few questions come through. So I'll jump into those. The first one was for A2X, and it was about whether A2X will allow you to map classes for QuickBooks in addition to accounts. So yes, back on the accounts and tax mapping screen, you can enable tracking or classes, and then what will happen is there'll be another column, and then when you're selecting the account, you can also select which tracking or class category you would like to apply to all of the individual transactions. So yes, you can do that. Okay, so I think the next one is for you, James. So it's a long one, so I'll read it out. It says, in the executive summary example, using the little @ to automate the KPI, how do you pull in the current month with an @ such that you can build a template and use in future months? I see how to bring in the actual KPI, but how do you get the current month populated with the @ functionality?
Oh yeah, I think maybe what they're asking is actually seeing the name of the period. So yeah, I can show it really quickly, but essentially there's, when you're in there editing the executive summary, there's the variables option. You can also bring in the company or group name, and then there's a period option. So just at the bottom of the text box when you're working in there, you'll see there's a little calendar icon, and if you hit that, you'll be able to select the period option. And if you select this month, any month you create the report for, it'll just show that period name, essentially. Hopefully that helps.
It sounds like they might be using the tool. So is there a customer success team that they can reach out to if they've got like more sort of operational questions?
100%. Yeah, definitely. The quickest way to get an answer on something like that is our support team. Our support team's awesome, very responsive, so you can get an answer back usually within 10 minutes. So if you use the in-app messenger option or email support@fathomhq.com, they'll be able to answer any questions you have.
So the next question is, you might have answered this one as part of your demo, James, but are we able to combine related businesses into one report, for example, multiple stores in a chain?
Yeah, good question, Jessica. And I think we covered some of that, but definitely it just depends on how you have the accounting set up. So if you've got locations set up in QuickBooks, for example, you'll be able to report on those separate stores in a Fathom report. But if they're separate entities, as in separate, sets of books, you would be able to bring them all into Fathom separately and then consolidate them into a single report, a single group level report.
Awesome. Okay, it says the next one's A2X, so it looks like quite a detailed one. Can A2X give you a breakdown of payouts, like which sale order payments have been released to us, or if we can make a reconciliation on the closing reserve balance versus disbursement report closing balance, which is based on cash basis. So to answer this, I think, so A2X is always going to reconcile the money that you've received. That's not to say it's not going to include money that it might have been held back by Amazon, so the reserve balances. So you might have seen in one of the examples that I shared, I think there was a reserve balance line. So I don't know the exact account that's put to, perhaps a accounts receivable account, but if the transaction occurred on Amazon, then yes, A2X will include it in the entry. It might have not been entirely obvious because we're matching to that cash sales, but in short, yes, A2X will include that information in your entry. And then the next one is, can you show us a demo of the formula function in Fathom reporting?
Happy to.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll share over.
There's one that's come through from A2X, so I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, go ahead.
But while I'll stop sharing, so you can bring those up. So I'll answer the A2X one as we're going. So the next one is, in A2X, can the timing of the revenue recognition be when the shipments are made rather than the payments are received? So I believe A2X goes on the payment date as opposed to the shipping received. I can double check that. I think in Amazon it's done through FBA more so, but on channels like Shopify, it's done by order date as opposed to the fulfillment date.
Yeah, just share over really quick here. So yeah, the formula builder is quite easy to use. Essentially, you can search any account or account classification or account heading from the chart of accounts, as well as any custom KPIs that have been set up. So in this case, like we had new customers, but I've got a cost of goods sold, percent of revenue KPI started here. So what I would do is just find my cost of goods sold heading in this case, and then just simply divide that by revenue. And in this case, it's going to have us express it as a percentage, but that would be it. So essentially, you can select any line item heading or account classification in your formula builder. You can also use prior periods if you wanted to show growth or change in something. And then you can also select the company that you're actually building the formula from. We're also going to be adding more functionality to this. So we're planning to add the ability to include rolling averages and other sort of aggregations into the formula as well.
Someone said that's all for now. Brilliant. Okay, I like that. That's a good way to wrap up the webinar. So, like I say, if you've got any more questions, feel free to reach out to us via our customer success, or you're welcome to email me directly, which is just amy@a2xaccounting.com. James has also included his email address. That can be included in the follow-up as well. But yeah, thanks everyone so much for joining today. Thank you, James, for sharing your time and giving us such a detailed demo of Fathom. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for setting a lot of this up. Appreciate it.
No worries. Awesome. Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.